A long road back to reconciliation with the king. This story keeps on coming round and round quite a lot over the last year, and I do believe it. It's been reported by the Mail on Sunday last summer. I reported it in January. It's come out again with a Mirror this week, that Harry does want, is his dream, to have his father there in Birmingham, standing beside him at the Invictus Games. It's his big baby. It's his massive project. It has to succeed. It's so important to him.
Someone walked into a room and said 4 quiet words to a king. "Your procedure, sir." This reportedly happened about 25 minutes into a private meeting between King Charles and his son Harry. According to one version of the story, the interruption came at exactly the right moment to give Charles a reason to leave. Now, nobody outside that room can know every detail of what really happened, especially because Charles has been receiving cancer treatment. But just picture the scene for a second. A father is finally sitting down with a son he reportedly hadn't seen properly in months. And then, just 25 minutes later, somebody walks through the door and the meeting is basically over. That's why those 4 simple words have become such an interesting part of this whole story. And this matters because Harry reportedly wants Charles to appear at the Invictus Games in Birmingham next summer. You might think that would be an easy invitation. Charles is the king, he has a major connection to the armed forces, and Invictus is all about wounded, injured, and sick service members and veterans. On paper, it makes sense, but the relationship between Harry and the royal family is anything but simple. Reports about Harry wanting Charles there have appeared in the media more than once, making this feel like more than just a quiet conversation between a father and son. To some critics, it looks like public pressure is being added to the situation. Then there's the timing, and this is where things get messy. Harry has also been involved in major legal fights with British newspaper publishers, and those cases can come with huge legal costs. Different numbers have been reported and discussed, so those figures shouldn't be treated as confirmed unless they're backed by court records. Still, there's no question that cases this big can cost serious money. And around the same period, stories about Harry wanting reconciliation with his family have continued appearing.
He was persuaded by a few lawyers that this was a system, like an ATM, where he could just say a few things, get emotional in the witness box and be paid out millions. Well, it didn't work because the system in this country, in the legal system, is independent and is rigorous, and Mr. Justice Nicklin did his job.
Then comes the Invictus invitation story. None of that proves the events are connected, but when all these stories start moving at the same time, people are obviously going to notice. Some critics have taken that timing and gone even further. They believe this may not simply be about a father and son trying to repair their relationship. They think family pressure, public image, and Harry's legal problems could all be hitting at the same time. Again, that's an interpretation, not a proven fact, but it explains why every new reconciliation story is now being examined so closely. People aren't only asking whether Harry wants his father back in his life. They're asking why these stories are appearing now, why they're appearing publicly, and what each side actually wants from the other. And then we get one of the most interesting details in this whole situation. A former Buckingham Palace press secretary was reportedly asked what happens when the monarch receives an invitation that could be awkward to accept. This wasn't just some random commentator making a guess. This was somebody with experience inside the royal system. Her explanation was surprisingly simple. She said the palace can put another engagement into the king's diary, giving him what she called a reasonable excuse. In other words, you don't always need some dramatic rejection. You don't need a public argument. You can simply make sure the calendar says the king needs to be somewhere else. Then she reportedly added an even more interesting line. Easy to get out of things, not so easy to get back in. That's a pretty cold sentence when you think about it. It suggests that creating distance can be simple, but fixing that distance later can be much harder.
There have been occasions where we've had an awkward situation with an invitation, and we have looked at trying to suddenly put in an engagement into the diary, so we've got a reasonable excuse that, you know, the monarch didn't have to go to this.
And that's exactly why people started connecting her explanation with Harry's own meetings with Charles. Because suddenly, your procedure, sir, doesn't sound like just 4 random words anymore. To critics, it sounds very similar to the kind of reasonable excuse the former press secretary was talking about. According to one account, Harry was meeting Charles when a staff member entered around the 25-minute point and mentioned the king's procedure. That gave Charles a reason to bring the meeting to an end. Now, we have to be fair here. Charles has been dealing with cancer, and none of us knows his full private medical schedule. There could have been a completely normal reason for that interruption, but people still noticed how short the meeting was. And if the interruption really was planned in advance, then somebody would have needed to know when to enter and what to say. No shouting, no argument, no dramatic scene, just 4 quiet words, and the meeting is done. Now look at the other meetings that have been reported, because the clock keeps becoming part of the story. One meeting was said to have lasted around 25 minutes. Another has been described as roughly 35 to 40 minutes. Then came the meeting that created headlines around the world because it was presented as a possible breakthrough between Harry and Charles.
There's been 3 meetings with the king. And I know for a fact on the first meeting, because I wrote about it, is that when Harry came down, they made up an appointment so that the king could be interrupted in 25 minutes, so that someone came in and said, "Oh, you've got your procedure, sir." He never had a procedure. He just wanted to get off to...
That meeting reportedly lasted around 47 minutes. 47 minutes. Maybe that really was progress. If 2 people haven't been spending much time together, even 47 minutes could matter. But it also shows just how far this relationship still appears to be from anything close to normal. Harry reportedly brought something personal with him as well, framed photographs. Reports claim there were pictures intended for Charles and another set intended for William and Catherine. Harry had apparently carried them thousands of miles across the Atlantic, but this is where the story gets seriously awkward. According to reports, Harry wasn't able to personally hand the second set to William and Catherine. There were even later questions about whether those photographs had been collected. Imagine carrying a family gift that far and then having to go through other people just to find out if your own brother received it. That detail says a lot about how distant the brothers appear to be right now. This isn't simply 2 brothers having an argument and refusing to call each other for a few weeks. Their relationship is reportedly moving through staff members, schedules, and other people in the middle. Harry reportedly wanted to hand over a personal gift, but even that couldn't lead to a face-to-face meeting. It's almost like sending a package and never knowing if anybody signed for it. The gift itself isn't really the biggest issue. The bigger issue is how difficult even the smallest contact appears to have become. And that brings us to William. Reports about his position have painted him as extremely cautious about letting Harry back into his life. One sentiment attributed to his side is basically that a couple of framed pictures and a few apologies isn't going to cut it. We can't know exactly what William says privately unless he says it himself.
The first one wasn't exactly close. The second, they exchanged a few gifts, and it was only about 35, 40 minutes again. And this meeting was probably about an hour. So, look, you know, is this great reconciliation? I don't think so.
But the wider reporting has suggested that the problem goes much deeper than one argument. This looks more like a serious problem with trust. After years of interviews, documentaries, books, and public accusations, William may believe that one meeting or one gift simply can't repair everything. And there's a big difference between anger and broken trust. Anger can cool down. People get mad, time passes, and eventually they can sit down and talk. Broken trust is harder because every new conversation comes with the question of what happens afterward. Will private details stay private? Will another disagreement become public? Will something said behind closed doors later appear in an interview or a book? Those are the kinds of concerns that have been linked to William's reported position, and they help explain why a simple meeting between the brothers appears to be so difficult. George has also been mentioned in some reporting around William's long-term thinking. George is still young and should not be pulled into an adult family fight. But because he's a future heir, the monarchy naturally thinks about what happens years from now. William isn't only a brother in this situation. He's also the future king, and George is part of the generation that comes after him. That means every family decision can also become an institutional decision, which makes an already difficult situation even more complicated. So when you put all these pieces next to each other, you can understand why the Invictus invitation matters so much. Harry's legal battles are happening. Reconciliation stories keep appearing. Meetings with Charles remain short. William still appears to be keeping his distance. And now Birmingham is sitting there on the calendar as another possible test.
Apparently Harry was very keen whether he could either present them himself, which was a definite no, because William's not having it, or indeed if he could find out if the pictures were ever received or indeed picked up. At this particular point, it's simply no.
None of these things automatically prove some secret palace plan, but together they show just how much tension still seems to exist beneath all the headlines about peace and reconciliation. And that's why those 4 words keep coming back. Your procedures, sir, they sound completely normal. They're polite, they're quiet. There's no fight and no dramatic royal showdown. But that's exactly what makes the story so interesting. If the accounts and interpretations are accurate, distance inside the palace doesn't always need to come with an angry statement or a slammed door. Sometimes a schedule can do the talking, and Birmingham may show whether that distance is finally getting smaller, or whether another reasonable excuse quietly appears in the diary. That's apparently the kind of timeline William may be thinking about. Not next month, and maybe not even next year. We're talking years down the road, because for William, this isn't only about fixing a fight between two brothers. He's also thinking about the future of the monarchy, his own role, and eventually George's role. That's why one apology, one meeting, or a couple of framed photographs may not be enough to suddenly fix years of damaged trust. But there's another detail about the Invictus story that changes the whole picture. If the palace really can avoid an awkward invitation by putting another event in the king's diary, then what happens if there's already something important sitting there? Queen Camilla's 80th birthday falls in July 2027, around the wider period leading into the Birmingham Invictus Games. That doesn't prove Charles won't attend, and the exact dates matter, but it gives the palace something very real to consider without needing to create some mysterious excuse. And there's another strange part. If Harry were seriously working on getting the king to appear at Invictus, you'd expect the people running the games to know something about it. A reigning monarch doesn't simply walk into an event like a normal guest. There would be security, seating, transport, timing, and ceremony to organize. Yet reports have suggested that the Invictus organization itself had not been informed about any confirmed royal appearance. Put those two things together, and the story starts looking different. Reports say Harry would like Charles there, but the organization actually responsible for running the event reportedly hasn't been given a confirmed plan. That doesn't prove the media reports were part of some pressure campaign, but it does raise a fair question. Was this really about planning Charles's appearance, or was it about publicly showing that Harry wants his father there? Because once an invitation becomes public, saying no becomes more complicated. Charles wouldn't simply be declining Harry. The headlines could frame it as the king refusing to attend an event supporting wounded and injured veterans. That's a much tougher public position. Whether that pressure was intentional or not, you can see why a public invitation carries more weight than a private phone call. Then there's the security issue. For years, Harry has argued that he and his family face serious security concerns when they're in Britain, and that dispute has gone through the courts. On quieter visits, however, there have also been occasions where Harry has traveled without the kind of major public incident people might expect from all the dramatic headlines. That doesn't mean his security concerns were fake. A trip going smoothly doesn't prove there was never any danger, but it does show why the debate keeps coming back every time he visits Britain. And this is where the public image gets complicated. Harry and Meghan have spoken about privacy and security while also sharing parts of their lives publicly through interviews, documentaries, and social media. Those two things aren't automatically contradictory. Public figures can share some moments while protecting others, but critics are always going to question where that line sits. Every photograph, video, or carefully released family moment becomes part of that bigger argument. Now we get to the money, and this is where we need to separate hard facts from speculation. Some commentary has tried to connect Harry's reported legal costs with his attempts to repair family relationships. Huge figures, including claims around £34 million, have circulated in coverage and commentary. But unless a court confirms the final amount, that number shouldn't be treated like a guaranteed bill sitting on Harry's table. Still, the basic question is obvious. Major legal cases cost serious money. And if Harry ever faced an enormous financial hit, people would naturally wonder whether Charles might help his son privately. That's where the photographs suddenly take on another meaning for critics. Harry reportedly brought personal gifts for his father and for William and Catherine while reconciliation was being discussed. Some people have looked at that and suggested there could be more going on than simple family kindness. But there's no solid evidence that those photographs were secretly connected to asking anybody for money. They could have been exactly what they appeared to be, an attempt to make a personal gesture during a badly damaged family relationship. Even so, money has reportedly caused tension between Harry and Charles before. One famous line attributed to Charles in earlier reporting is, "I'm not a bank." Reports have long claimed that Charles provided financial support after Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, before that support eventually changed or ended. So when people now hear about massive possible legal costs, that old quote naturally comes back into the conversation. But there's a big difference between Charles being able to help and Charles actually agreeing to help. He's Harry's father, but he's also managing his own health and royal responsibilities. And if Charles previously disagreed with Harry's legal strategy, he might not feel responsible for paying the consequences of those decisions. On the other hand, families sometimes do things privately that they'd never explain publicly. That's why nobody outside that family can confidently say what Charles would do if Harry genuinely asked him for financial help. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan's wider business situation keeps getting picked apart. Every podcast appearance, media deal, product launch, and social media post gets treated like evidence about whether their brand is rising or falling. Sometimes that criticism goes way too far. A birthday video, a jar of jam, or a candle doesn't tell us somebody's entire financial position, but it does show how closely every move they make is being watched. There have even been reports and speculation about gifts or products being sent toward people connected with Diana's Spencer family. Again, sending somebody jam or candles doesn't prove there's some bigger plan, but because Harry's relationship with the royal side of his family remains strained, any sign that he's maintaining or strengthening connections with Diana's relatives immediately gets attention. And when you zoom out, that's really what makes this whole situation so messy. Almost every move can be read in two completely different ways. Harry reaches out and one side calls it reconciliation, while another calls it pressure. He brings photographs, and one side sees a family gesture while critics see strategy. He wants Charles at Invictus, and supporters see a son offering his father an important place at a meaningful event, while critics wonder why the request is appearing in newspapers before any confirmed plan appears publicly. But here's what we actually have. Harry reportedly wants Charles in Birmingham. William still appears deeply cautious about rebuilding their relationship. The Invictus organizers have not publicly announced Charles as part of the games. Charles has his own royal schedule and family commitments, and Harry continues dealing with expensive legal battles at the same time. That's already dramatic enough without turning every rumor into a proven secret plan. And then we're right back where this entire story started. Your procedure, sir. 4 simple words that reportedly came during one of Harry's short meetings with his father. Whether that moment was a planned exit or a completely normal medical commitment, it perfectly captures why this relationship is so difficult to read from the outside. 1 minute, headlines say father and son are finally reconnecting. The next minute, we're counting how many minutes they actually spent together. 25 minutes here, 40-something minutes there, a few photographs, an invitation, another newspaper story, and still no clear sign that the family is anywhere close to being fully repaired. That's why Birmingham could become such an important moment. If Charles attends Invictus, Harry gets something huge, a very public sign that his father is willing to stand beside an event that's deeply connected to Harry's identity and military service. If Charles doesn't attend, people will immediately start asking whether it was simply a scheduling issue or another sign that the distance between them is still very real. And then there's William. Even if Charles and Harry manage to improve their relationship, Harry's situation with his brother appears to be a completely different mountain to climb. The reports we've seen suggest William isn't interested in rushing anything. From his point of view, rebuilding trust could take years, not weeks. So what happens if Harry's legal costs eventually become much bigger than expected? Does Charles help privately because after everything, Harry is still his son? Or does he decide that Harry has to handle the financial consequences of his own legal decisions? That's the question I want to throw over to you. Do you think Charles eventually shows up in Birmingham and gives Harry that major public moment? Do you think William ever agrees to sit down with his brother again? And if Harry ends up facing a massive legal bill, should Charles help him or should Harry handle it himself? Drop your comments down below because I want to know where you land on this one. And if you enjoyed the video, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who's been following this royal drama. There's clearly plenty more to come from this story, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.